In this video, we're going to do interval practice with fourths and fifths. So I have a bunch of intervals here we're going to identify. Some of them are melodic, meaning you see one note and then another note. Some of them are harmonic, meaning we see two notes together at the same time. And all of these are either perfect fourths, perfect fifths, or tritones. Remember, tritone is a generic name that could mean an augmented fourth or a diminished fifth. All right, let's take a look at our first one. We have an A to a D. We're on the treble clef. That's 1, 2, 3, 4 apart. And this is a perfect fourth, which I'll abbreviate P4. Because it's a half step larger than a major third. Let's take a look at the next one. Going from an E to an A. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the number is a 5. So at this point, we're just deciding the quality. Is it a perfect fifth or a diminished fifth? Well, if we remember what a perfect fourth is, this is a whole step larger than a perfect fourth, or a major second larger than a perfect fourth. So this is a perfect fifth. Here's the next one, going from an E flat to an A. 1, 2, 3, 4. So there's a fourth. And a perfect fourth would have been E flat to A flat. And this is one half step larger than that. So this is an augmented fourth. It's a tritone. Let's take a look at this for a second. A very common mistake that people make is they start to think, well, if I don't see any accidentals, then it must be a perfect interval. And if I do see an accidental, it must be a tritone. This is a really dangerous mistake to make because it doesn't work. This is an assumption that a lot of people make at the beginning. Oftentimes it might be true, but oftentimes it won't be true. So really be careful about coming up with these systems like this, unless somebody actually points it out to you in a textbook or a class or something like that. Often when we come up with patterns like this, they don't necessarily work out, and that's one that does not work. So you really have to count the notes. You really have to imagine what it looks like on a keyboard. And feel free to sit and practice with a keyboard. You might, if you're not a pianist, you might reference something like this, but really, the more you can get this in your mind, the better you're going to be at pretty much all music theory, and especially identifying intervals. You really want to get to a place where you can just think about this. And I'll give you one more trick. I'm a pianist, and so this comes a little bit easier to me, but if you're not a pianist, you still want to get to a place where this is all in your head. When I sit down and I have to identify intervals, or even if I'm doing something more complicated, like thinking about part writing, what I do is I literally sit at my desk, even if there's no piano, and I go through and I move my hands as if I'm playing on a piano, and I just am imagining what's going on. Because you have so much more ability to visualize things in your head than you do to audiate things in your head. So it's kind of a trick that we're doing. And if you want to prove that, by the way, just sit with anybody in a room and say, can you close your eyes and imagine a scene and paint a scene for them? Say you're sitting on the grass and you're watching the sunrise. Everyone can imagine that. But if you say now, imagine the series of notes and say you have a B flat going to a D, it's pretty hard for most people to do that. So human beings are better at visualization than we are at audiation. And so one of the tricks that we do to get better at this is to kind of tie our sound, our audiation, to visualization. In other words, it's easier for us to think about what a piano looks like than to think about what a piano sounds like. So if we can imagine what the piano looks like and start practicing that way, we're basically borrowing resources from our brain's visual cortex, maybe. I don't know about the science, but we're basically borrowing information from how our brain processes vision and using that for how it processes sound. That's the trick. Okay, let's take a look at the next one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. From D to A flat, that's a fifth. Remember, I'm always counting, including the notes that I'm using. And a perfect fifth would have been D to A. D to A flat is a diminished fifth. Here's another one. B flat to F. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's a fifth. And I'm so glad I put this one in here, because this is one of those things that's going to break your habit if you're starting to think, oh, if there's one accidental, it must be something tritone. Well, it's not. In this case, this is a perfect fifth. B flat to F is a perfect fifth. It's a whole step larger than a perfect fourth. Even though there's one accidental and one natural, remember, like I said, that pattern just doesn't work. All right, here's the next one. F sharp to C. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is a fifth. A perfect fifth would have been F sharp to C sharp. So this is a diminished fifth. Let's move on to the next row here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're now in bass clef, by the way. So we're going from A to E flat. That's a fifth. And a perfect fifth would have been E to A. This is a diminished fifth. Here we're going A to D sharp. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 apart. And a perfect fifth would have been A to D. This is A to D sharp. And here you go. You can see this on that keyboard, by the way, too. A to D would have been a perfect fifth. A to D sharp. That's a diminished fifth. All right, at this point, I'm going to introduce a shortcut with the last few. I want you to notice that, you could count like I just did, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But once you're comfortable with the concept, an easier way to think about it is, when it's a fifth, I'm going, starting on a line, and I'm going line, line, right? Or I'm starting on a space, and I'm going space, space. So anytime we're skipping, we have two of the same types of thing, either line, space to a space, space, or line to a line, line, that's a fifth. But when we go space to a space line, that's a fourth. How about this one? Line to a line space, that comes up short. That's another fourth of some kind. I'm not saying what type yet. And line to a line space, that's another fourth. If that is too confusing, you can still just count 1, 2, 3, 4. It's up to you. All right, let's take a look at this one. We have C to an F. Here's our keyboard. C to F, that's a perfect fourth. We have a G to a C sharp. That is an augmented fourth. And we have B flat to E. That's another augmented fourth.
If you found that video helpful, please click the subscribe button below to find more videos just like it.